I say good evening. My name is Amy Jeunesse. I joined the Center for Coastal Studies in January as the Director of Marketing, Communications, and Outreach. And it's my pleasure to welcome you tonight to the Center's March Napi's lecture with Dr. Sarah Oktay, who also joined in January as the Executive Director. Sarah is going to tell you about the Center for Coastal Studies, so I'd like to tell you a little bit about Sarah. Sarah spent the last 27 years conducting climate change related research, teaching, fundraising, and communicating with the public. She received her BS in marine science and a PhD in chemical oceanography from Texas A&M University, Galveston. She was the executive director of the University of Massachusetts' Boston Nantucket Field Station. She's a member and former president of the Society for Women Geographers and also served as the president of the Organization of Biological Field Stations, a professional organization representing several hundred field stations across the globe. Sarah has served as the senior science advisor for actor Mark Ruffalo, advising him on topics such as climate change, fracking, and water quality monitoring for the nonprofits that he founded. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Sarah Oktay.
Thank you, Amy. That was very sweet. It's really great to have you here at the Center for Coastal Studies. I have just been here 3 short months, and I'm going to try to summarize a giant program for the folks that have joined us today. I never got a chance to meet Napi, and I'm so sorry that I could not, because I think I would have really enjoyed knowing him. But I do want to thank everyone who knew him and loved him and appreciated him and everything he did for the community, which was vast. That I want to extend my condolences that he's gone, and my thanks for all that he's done for the Center for Coastal Studies and all that his estate and he continued to do. And hopefully before long, we'll be able to get back over to Napi's and do these live. But the beauty of Zoom is that people can attend from all over the place, including some dear friends from Nantucket. So great to see you. So today I'm going to tell you about the many departments that are here at the Center for Coastal Studies. I'm sure most of you know how it started, but if you did not, it was started by 3 friends, Graham Geis, Charles Stormy Mayo, and Dr. Barbara Schuler Mayo. They all were passionate about doing coastal science, coastal research, were young, probably a little naive, and had the energy to launch this in 1976. So we'll approach our 50-year anniversary here in just 4 years. We have grown from a small center that was meeting in the attic of the Provincetown Chamber of Commerce to a 12,000 square foot state-of-the-art state certified lab, which is open to the public starting on May 14th and where you can come actually see science being done. Those 3 young kids who are now our senior scientists, except for Barbara, who's gone, provide plenty of inspiration to the other scientists here. And now we have a staff of 45, more than 60 adjunct scientists, and several hundred volunteers. We here at the Center for Coastal Studies do science that matters. And, all science matters to some extent. But what I mean by this is we take our science, we share it with all the groups that can use it and put it to use in applied manners. So most of our science is designed to inform policymakers, to lead to new regulations, to see if current regulations are working. We partner with a huge number of various groups, from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to the New England Aquarium to the Pleasant Bay Community Boating. I list a few of them here. There are actually about 65 partners that we work with, including most of the municipalities on the Cape and Islands. Here's a listing of our different research programs and our departments. So our main departments are population biology, ecology, marine geology, marine education, marine animal entanglement response. Those are our major programs. We're actually launching a few new departments, but on the right lists all of the research that I'm going to try to get through in the next 40 minutes, which go from humpback whale research to right whale research, MARE, which is the entanglement team, marine geology, which is a huge department, water quality, fisheries, seals, sharks, education, marine debris, interdisciplinary studies, marine policy, and some of our different marine policy initiatives. So our most famous one possibly is the right whale research program. And here we get to see two beautiful right whales. And our right whale team, which has been up in the air, has already spotted about 150 individual right whales this year. The first documented right whale on Cape Cod of the 2022 season is in this image. This was taken, I believe, in late December, and it's the 2019 calf of IGNO, which is what we use for shorthand for right whale, 3317. How can we see these? Well, we've got people in the sky 2 or 3 times a week on this little Sky Master plane, crammed together, 4 people in a plane with big windows, taking lots of photos, and their ability to identify whales is based on their photography ability, their ability not to get seasick or airsick when circling for 8 to 10 hours, and their many years of experience sighting right whales, fin whales, sei whales, and other whales from the sky. This link down here below, and we'll make sure to put a link on our website and share that with all of you, goes to their field notes. And I highly recommend checking out their field notes. They post them every day, and it's really a great way to feel like you are with them in the plane, living the life of an aerial observer. You can see them in the lower right above my head, getting ready to jump into the plane. This is some of the tracks of the aerial surveys in Cape Cod Bay. We also fly all the way up north to the northern part of the Gulf of Maine, not too far past Cape Ann, but right off Cape Ann, a little bit to the east off of Cape Cod itself, and then down south all the way to the Nantucket Shoals. We basically plow or make these straight lines counting for right whales. And some days, like about 3 weeks ago, we see 99 of them. We also spot everything from humpback whales, dolphins, to other marine mammals, even seals. In addition, while the plane is up in the air, which it is a couple of times a week, we've got vessels out on the water. These vessels are going out also counting visually for right whales, which they can identify obviously more easily from the water. Typically, those vessel surveys are mainly in Cape Cod Bay. We're also sampling for the food that right whales eat. So we're doing all kinds of water sampling, looking at temperature, conductivity, and salinity, which would be my end of the stick if I was on the boat, to pumping the water and looking for copepods like Calanus, which are the primary food source for right whales. We can identify these hundreds of creatures living in the water column and get an idea of why the right whales are here. Here we show a picture of Calanus in the upper left, the toe for the plankton on the middle upper right, a close-up of the plankton, which is kind of an orangish color. What it looks like to work in the lab going clockwise. That's Christy in the lab identifying the copepods and then sampling for other items. Switching now quickly to our seal program. We monitor gray seals and white sharks together and separately. The seal program has been going on for many years here. We have a wave station in a coastal bluff location right inside the Cape Cod National Seashore by the old Air Force Base. And we have observers up there looking for seals. When it's allowed and appropriate, we also sometimes use drones and aircraft to look for seals and boats. So we have a long-term monitoring program at gray seal haulouts in southeastern Massachusetts. This would include Muskeget, some parts of Tuckernuck, Monomoy, the lower part of Monomoy, and all of the other areas that seals like to go hang out and stay away from the sharks. Our newest research program is looking at what we call greenies, somewhat affectionately, which are these seals, these gray seals that have a algal growth on the back or the pelage of their fur. We see this at haul-out points in southeastern Mass, and we're trying to figure out if this is related to changes in sunlight, water temperature, or nutrients. Next, I'll switch to the shark program. So we just started a shark program a couple of years ago. This is Brian Laguerre is out there measuring sharks using acoustic receivers. He's not out there swimming around counting them because that's not the safest way to look for great white sharks. But we have a acoustic array that we in turn share with the Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries. Brian is working on his PhD with UMass Amherst. We have combined with many different organizations to form the New England White Shark Research Consortium. We work with Greg Scommel in the state. We work with the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy with the New England Aquarium, with many other organizations that are listed here. It is a big group effort, and that's one of the things I love about being at the Center for Coastal Studies is all the collaboration. What Brian is doing is getting very fine scale measurements of these sharks. He can actually tell you on any given day exactly where sharks are off the entire coast of or a large portion of Cape Cod Bay, and I'll show you a quick map of that. So on the left here, you can see his array of acoustic receivers. So the shark has to be tagged. The shark does not, is not indicated unless it has been tagged by a pinger or something that is emitting sound. Some sharks also have satellite tags. We put receivers in the water that can then pick up the signals when these tagged sharks move by. And close to maybe 100, maybe 200 white sharks have been tagged. On the right, you see this entire map of different densities of sharks and where we're measuring them based on the depth of the water. And sharks like actually pretty shallow water. And as you can see from the left here, they like to stay in these troughs between sandbars. We're not sure if that provides them some cover and some surprise factor, but they follow these troughs almost like someone following a path on the side of a sidewalk. Brian provides all that data to the municipalities to help keep people safe. That's one of many reasons we do this shark research. I'm next switching to, and I know it's a lot of switching, 11 programs, 45 minutes. Marine Fisheries Research Program, which is one of our long-term programs that does a lot of collaborative research with fishermen. We work together with the fishing and shellfishing community to collect data on gear modification, shellfish population, the population size of finfish, squid, identifying juvenile lobster habitat, which we identified over in Pleasant Bay. This is Owen Nichols, who has been here for 23 years. He started when he appeared to be maybe 12 here at the Center for Coastal Studies. He's a great scientist and a longtime fisherman and does an amazing job of collaborating. So here we're showing some gear retrieval work and trying out some new gear like ropeless gear for lobster fishery. Here's a little juvenile lobster found in the Pleasant Bay area. And then on the right, a shellfish aquaculture near shore project. This subtitle Shellfish Aquaculture Project is working with oyster fishermen and fisherwomen to look at areas where oysters can be set and how spat are moving, what the settlement rates and recruitment look like. We also do a lot of derelict fishing gear or ghost gear removal. We use we use our boats, we use our fishing acumen, and we use our side scan sonar and bottom mapping to determine where fishing gear is and then go and retrieve it. So that helps our marine debris program, our fishing program, and in many cases, we even return it to the fishermen. Owen does a ton of outreach at the dock, at the rail, talking and working with fishermen every day to have a real authentic relationship with them that is a true collaboration. We've done some research on both longfin and short-finned squid in Nantucket Sound. This is a big, it's often called the ice cream of the sea because everyone eats squid, almost every fish out there. It tells us a lot about temperatures and about the health of the sound. And they're cute. We do research, Owen does research on marine mammal depredation and bycatch by gill nets. So we put cameras on gill nets underwater. This is a very green image, a lot of algae in the water. And you can see a pretty good size, looks like almost a black tip shark moving by. And so these cameras can monitor when and how animals interact with these gill nets so that we can help reduce bycatch and depredation or these larger animals eating all the fish in the gill net. The next program I'm going to talk a bit about is population biology and humpback whales. Jupe is on the call, and she knows way more than I know on this. This is an incredible program, one of the longest running programs we have here at the Center for Coastal Studies. And I have a very wordy slide here to tell you a little bit about this. We look at whale populations using a variety of techniques to try to understand where they are around the world and how their populations are doing. And there's a few different distinct populations. We use everything from mark recapture statistics, where we can identify whales based on their fluke or their scars on them. Molecular genetics, where we actually take samples and look at how they have changed their genetics across populations and basins. Genomics, which is a larger version of looking at genetics in the broader, almost ecosystem level. Microbiology, endocrinology, toxology, and ethology. We're building a brand new genetics lab for humpback whale research here that hopefully will be at least started this fall. That'll allow us to do a lot more. We're typically looking at the impacts of human activities on marine mammal populations. The Humpback Whale Studies program is the longest continuous research program at the Center for Coastal Studies. It's also one of the most detailed and long-term studies of a baleen population anywhere. We maintain the Gulf of Maine humpback whale catalog and its synthesis of more than 4 decades of the research. And we do collaborative research in the West Indies, the North and South Pacific, over in Hawaii, and across the North Atlantic. Here's an example of one of our programs from about 10 years ago called the Noaa Project, which is the Years of the North Atlantic Humpback. And this is where we were looking at known feeding and breeding grounds of the North Atlantic humpback whale. We looked at the exchange rate, not actual migration, but the exchange rate between all of these different areas. As you know, most large whale species tend to migrate a lot, have different areas for feeding and for raising their calves. And for instance, with the North Atlantic right whale, we see them all the way down south by Florida, and they make it all the way up north to Nova Scotia. On the left, we can see Juke taking a sample off of Hawaii, biopsy sample, which is basically getting a small plug of skin from a whale to check and see what its DNA figure looks like. Our humpback and our MARE team, which MARE stands for the Marine Animal Entanglement Response Team, work very closely together and have for a long time. And I'll get to MARE here soon. So next, I'm going to talk about our marine geology department. And this is a large department with 10 faculty and staff. It's divided into 3 sections: the Land-Sea Interaction Program, which is probably our oldest program, the Seafloor Mapping Program, the Coastal Geographic Research and Applied Sciences Program, which is a very in-depth geographic information system, or GIS program. And then we have 2 collaborative labs. One's called the Cape Lab at UMass Boston, and it's the Coastal Processes and Ecosystem Lab. And then we also work with the Stone Lab. So here's dear Graham, who at 91 is still in here once or twice a week, giving incredible talks. He gave a fascinating talk at Pleasant Bay this past Saturday. And if you get a chance to see a recording of that, I highly recommend that. And it actually talked a lot about the moving nodal point for sediment transport along Cape Cod and how that's moving further south. But this upper left-hand corner shows opening and closing of various inlets off of Chatham Harbor, and he maps using a lot of high-level math the changes in sediment flow and tidal flushing. He also has literally written the book, as you can see in that lower left-hand corner, of coastal landforms of Cape Cod. And behind me is Graham, like he is every day, off of the beach, probably there at Nauset or maybe at Marconi doing measurements. One of his international projects was looking at the creation of a seiche, or a wash tub effect there in the Bay of Bengal. And he was able to measure how changes all the way over here in the Andaman Sea affected Sri Lanka and a very small harbor there related to storm surge. Most of our scientists work overseas in at least one or two projects, which I find fascinating. Here's a great example of what the Marine Geology Department can do. This is a depth map, so that green and blues are the channel coming in this harbor. And you can see the red is the shallow area. So we do all kinds of mapping for towns, municipalities, fishermen, all kinds of folks. Spend a lot of time doing, and I'll explain a little bit more in a second, side scan sonar mapping that's high resolution. So we can actually pick out a tire, actually a can, anchors, but minute changes in the benthic characteristics that tell us a lot about what's happening in a harbor or in a nearshore area. One of my favorite groups is a group that's been doing work in Wellfleet Harbor and Duck Harbor, doing sediment measurements for the marsh restoration project associated with the Herring River restoration. They've also been measuring all of the major overwash fans that are occurring there off of Wellfleet Harbor, and which is quite spectacular. And so this is Katie and our new Liza, our new student coming in on the left. Out there in the muck every day, putting in transducers and different equipment that measures the level of the sediment and the amount of water above it. You can see a picture of the altimeter here on the right in Duck Harbor. Little mosquito-y, but other than that, a great. I'm not going to go through all of these, but here are some of the other things that the Marine Geology Department does. For instance, I'm not going to cover the Department of Defense unexploded ordnance program that we do, but we do find a lot of unexploded ordnance and help remove it. Here's two different maps of the seafloor. I think this is right off of Stellwagen Bank near one of the islands in the Boston Island State Park system. And on the left, you've got a regular visual image showing the bathymetry. And then on the right, you have a side scan sonar that gives you even more information on top of that visual layer. So we can combine these two to get some very intricate and detailed information. Here's what a day in the life looks like. This is from Pedro, our brand new seafloor mapper who just got here from Brazil and had quite an effort getting here, jumping through the hoops that both COVID and coming from a foreign country. One of the things that really warmed my heart is when I wrote to staff asking for photos. 30 of my staff responded in 24 hours with all kinds of photos of what they're doing. And this is from Pedro, showing him spending much of his time on the computer building these maps using GIS and all kinds of pretty heavy duty processing. In the morning, he started in the second panel and with his feet up, watching a lot of the same kind of maps as they were collecting data from the third device, which is on the right, which is that side scan sonar device that is placed off the front bow of the ship as they're underway. On the far right is two people, Brian Laguerre and one of our harbor masters, collecting a sediment sample of that mayo, that black mayo or custard, which is organic matter that we found and identified in some of the harbors. So mapping stormtide pathways is one of the things we're most proud of. We have mapped all of these areas. And so we take all of this information and we've created an app for actually mapping stormtide pathways. And I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm going to try to click on this and see if I can get it to work. And it does not want to, which is fine. So we do have an app for that. If you put into Google stormtide pathways, there'll be an app where you can look at different municipalities and look and see exactly how storm tides move into harbors. And we accurately mapped the extreme storm surge that we experienced here in Provincetown just 3 years ago, or almost 4 years ago now in 2018. So this is a map of that we predicted of moderate flooding. And sure enough, this is exactly where the flooding occurred in a storm nor'easter that occurred during a high tide, during a spring tide where we had abnormally high tides. And unfortunately, as we all know, that's going to happen more often than not. So having these storm surge pathways developed, and we've developed it now for about 20 different municipalities, helps cities and harbor masters plan for what infrastructure to protect and what infrastructure. Thank you, Amy. Amy put a link to it. You'll have a lot of fun with that link. The very next thing I'm showing here is our drone program. We are fortunate enough to have a full-time drone operator who's extremely good at not only using unmanned aerial systems, which is a highfalutin way of saying a drone, but a remotely piloted aircraft. These aircraft actually can really be effective on looking at everything from seals to whales to plovers to other creatures that we wouldn't want to get close to and affect their behavior. We can actually see things from above, put a variety of different cameras from thermal to multispectral that give us incredible information on what the land looks like, what the offshore area looks like. Here's an example of one of the things that we do. We use two-dimensional images collected with a digital camera that we transfer into surface elevation models. And this is called structure from motion. And it's a lot of high-level math, but it basically is bouncing signals and using a camera and stitching them together and getting very exact elevations. So this is flipped on its side so that we can get a 3D image. Once we have this, we can map or model anything from large marine mammals prior to being necropsied to oyster reefs to coral reefs and large-scale coastal features such as dunes. Often we use this information and provide it to the state and to different folks. For instance, this is the Cape Cod National Seashore, and this is not all our data, but it's a variety of data, both from us and from other colleagues, showing different levels of vulnerability based on tidal range, wave height, the slope of the coast, shoreline change, what the erosion rate is, the geomorphology, which is exactly what the material is made of, whether it's bedrock or sand or silt, and the historical rate of sea level rise. We can provide this information to homeowners and to insurance companies so that we can appropriately plan for vulnerability of coasts. And this is being done worldwide. And this is a great example, in my opinion, of taking a lot of kind of esoteric data and putting it together in a way that we can plan for and understand. Next, I'll go to our marine debris and plastics program. And if you've picked up a paper or watched TV, this has been a very popular program. Laura Ludwig is killing it out there every week with dozens of volunteers collecting many, many tons of marine debris. And what we do differently than almost every other trash cleanup team in the world is we actually count and quantify all the marine debris. So we literally pour hundreds of pounds of pretty stinky trash out on big tables and actually count all the rope, all the cigarettes, all the plastic bags. This gives us an idea of what the actual input of plastic and other pollutants are into the environment. And we were one of the first groups to actually discover this shallow shock tubing right here on the right. This is this yellow shock tubing that's being used in a major project about 4 or 5 months ago up in Boston Harbor. This was basically the fuse that they would use to put gunpowder down, or it's something similar, to blow up the bedrock in order to dredge rocky areas. So the Army Corps of Engineers and the miners and the dredgers did everything they could to retain this material, but a lot of it got loose, and so we've been picking up several thousand feet of this material all over our beaches. And we're actually working with ACE, the Army Corps of Engineers, Noaa, and with the marine dredgers that ran the whole process, and with the different regulatory agencies to try to minimize this in the future. One of the many things we do is retrieve ghost gear. I don't know if you've heard of ghost gear, but that is gear that either got separated from its buoy, or the fishermen couldn't find it, or just got left from 100 million years ago, who knows. But it's gear at the bottom of the ocean. Most of our harbors are just covered with junk like this, and we help use our side scan sonar and our boats to retrieve this material and sometimes even return it to the original owner. As you all know, plastics and microplastics are a huge issue, from the fleece in our fleece vests to all the materials of plastics that we unfortunately use that get broken down finer and finer until they become microplastics and get into the food web. We have a pretty large microplastics effort here, looking for microplastics in our thousands of benthic samples. We also, one of the things that makes me happy and not sad when I think about pollution is that we have coordinated with many different artists to actually start doing a marine debris art projects. And so we have 7 or 8 different artists that work with us in a variety of ways. This is a big, beautiful a giant rug made out of fishing gear and rope. We've actually, Laura's become a rope broker and provided used and retired rope from lobster fisheries that has washed ashore to artists like Orly Ganger and the Cape Porpoise Trading Company to create these things. We have probably at our open house on May 14th, you'll get to see some other examples. Next, we'll jump to our water quality and monitoring. As you all know, I could talk about this for days and days, but I'm going to have to fly through it. But we have been doing 30 plus years, almost 4 decades of water quality monitoring through at all of these little red spots that you see on this map. These 2 maps on the right are showing nutrient and temperature fluxes from different areas. We have tons of collaborators, including MWRA, Buzzards Bay Coalition, Massachusetts Environmental Trust, the APCC, County of Barnstable. We're really fortunate to have a lot of folks helping us with this. One of our many areas of concern, so typically we'll measure for nutrients, temperature, salinity, conductivity, turbidity, chlorophyll A, all the things you'd want to look at to determine the health of the sound or the harbor. One of the things we looked at a few years ago was contaminants of emerging concern, and those would include pharmaceuticals, things like um, uh, estrogen, endocrine disruptors, caffeine, pesticides, herbicides, things like that. And so we found, some example of this throughout many little spots, both on the islands and along the open shore, the open sound sections here, as well as up in the Cape and bays and freshwater ponds. These are all human caused, so they have to come from human input, and typically it comes from sewage waste or some type of storm outflow. And here's a couple of things. If you guys can take a camera shot or get a picture of this, you definitely want to go to these 2 sites. I was hoping to open both of them, but I'm glad I grabbed screenshots. So all of our data, 40 years of data, lives on these 2 slots, which you can find easily too at the Center for Coastal Studies if you type in water quality. But capecodbay.monitor.org provides a lot of our data. It provides this map on the left where you can click on that and actually find all the measurements that were taken at those spots in the last few years. And then capecodwaters.org hosts a lot of the other data that's even more comprehensive. The Alliance to Protect Cape Cod has hosting a lot of this data. The Cape Cod Commission hosts a lot of this. We share a lot of water quality data, and we've got some great partners that are willing to help host it because there's so much involved. The quick story is, and this will be, I'll be speaking in a few weeks about this for another small lecture on water quality. But, the sad story is our water quality is degrading. Our water's too hot. There's too many nutrients. There's phosphate from fertilizers. We've got morphic or anthropogenic constituents like pharmaceuticals in it. And fortunately, the state and nationwide, we're putting a lot of money into upgrading our septic systems, reducing fertilizer input. So we're working on it, but it's a toughie. You can see by all these red dots, all the impaired areas. None of that's good. If you see a red dot, that is not good. And there's a lot of red dots there. Jumping to something a little more fun, benthic habitat studies. If you're like really bored and want to pick through several thousand pounds of sand and sediment, then you can come join us here. Here's a map of different sediment studies that we have taken throughout Pleasant Bay, showing all kinds of different larval creatures. And then this very charismatic microfauna on the left. Dr. Agnes Mittermeier gave a wonderful talk at Pleasant Bay this past weekend about these adorable creatures. And here is our team of volunteers who has been picking giant, piles of stained with a type of rhodamine, a type of rose Bengal stain, sand and sediment full of creatures. And of that, they found 327,208 creatures. 415 species, 733 jars that were picked over, and every species, every animal removed. And these are teeny tiny. It's under a microscope. 3,048 hours of staring through a microscope, looking at little grains of sand. And we could not have done it without these volunteers. A lot of them are very cute, like this little crustacean up here, which helps when you're spending hours looking through a microscope. One of our very exciting teams, and often a little bit sad too. I'm doing a quick time check to see where we're at. 30 minutes. All right, we're getting there. Is our marine animal entanglement response team. This is one of the best trained teams in the world. They are on call 24/7. They all have to live very close to the center here. They basically act as a SWAT team for disentanglement of marine mammals and turtles. Here's an example, a horrible example of a very difficult disentanglement and how a whale or right whale can get themselves in a serious life-threatening pickle. Entanglements are one of the two major causes for the death of right whales and many other whale species like humpback whales. Ship strikes are the other main cause of death for these animals. It's a horrible way to die. It sometimes takes 6 months to die. Anytime we can get out there and safely remove gear, which is typically ropes that are in the water column that they get entangled with, we'll do it. All of these photos you can tell too, by the way, I want to point out, this is from a Noaa permit. We never go out there without having full permits, full training. It takes 8 years actually to be trained to be the top level disentanglement person. We take the approach of marine mammals very seriously. This is the Ibis with the full team on board. We can actually get this out in the water in 15, 20 minutes and get out on site. Typically, when we approach a whale in distress, often we'll keg it or attach a buoy to it so that we can try to keep it at the surface. We do not, obviously drug or in any other way do any kind of necropsy or surgery on whales. We have to just try to grapple the material off of them as safely as we can. In order for right whales to recover, we need to prevent their deaths and we need to hope for at least 10 calves a year. This year, we've had 15 calves. Moving on to education and outreach, we have a huge education outreach program here run by one person effectively, and 3 or 4 volunteers and a couple of interns each summer. But Jesse Mecklin here does school classes year round on water quality, on seals, and on whales, on all the different subjects. And many of our scientists too have separate education programs built into their science. But in addition to this, Jesse helps us with our kiosk at the McMillan Pier. He runs Sea Space, which is our Marine Discovery Center, which opens June 23rd and is located in Whalers Wharf for kids. We have a lot of family sea camp type programs that run during the day. All kinds of fun programs. We'll be putting all of that online here soon. Overall, he sees 500 to 700 students a year and about via the public programs, another 800 people, and then our kiosk visitors, 10,000 a year. So a huge number. And actually in the classrooms, I think we're closer to a couple thousand. He's inside a whale. And this is an older picture of him. He told me with more hair. Here's education and outreach programs. We have junior scientist, a junior rescue scientist program for kids. And we've been doing whale walks and walks along the dunes for the last 2 months. So even when it's cold, we're out there looking at the right whales and talking about them. We actually have a lot of public programs, including Whale Week, which is July 31st through August 6th. That includes a homemade boat race and a run for the whales through the Cape Cod National Seashore and tons of activities here on site. And I have a little link at the bottom to Whale Week. One of the things I just did actually for a young girls podcast and a video cast was tell them about Spinnaker and take my camera to show them. And Scott Landry, our director of the Marine Entanglement Response Program, also gives incredible talks about this poor humpback whale who we unfortunately knew through most of her life and was entangled 5 different times. That's a good question, Tom. We'll definitely get to that. We do have a lot of volunteers. Yes, Spinnaker died at the age of 11 from a major entanglement that we could not remove. And so this is her third entanglement. She had a total of 5. We were able to remove almost all, but one of the entanglements, see this line that's up in her upper palate, ended up stuck and could not be removed, and actually is still in her palate even today. It's a very powerful skeleton. We have a very nice exhibit talking about it. It's kind of heartbreaking, but frankly, I'm glad to walk by it every day because it reminds me of why we're here. We'll be opening Spinnaker exhibit for self-guided tours on May 14th. And we'll also have some established guided tours of Spinnaker and people and docents here and down on the dock and over at Whalers Wharf and then out in the beaches. We're doing our big open house on May 14th, where you could come talk to people who know a lot more about all of this than me. Our boat captain, who just had surgery, still insisted that I make sure and show off some of the boats that he takes care of for us. We have about 6 different vessels that are ready to go at a given time. Our heavy duty season for right whales is from December to May. Then we start getting into our water quality season, our humpback season, our disentanglement season, our geology season runs almost all year long. So at any given time, we've got several boats in the water, each with different capabilities. This lower left-hand corner shows our marine geology boat, which has to have a heavy kind of swinging winch on the front to put down our side scan sonar equipment. And then upper right is Ibis, which has to be fast. We have to finish up. I've got just a few more slides talking about our global programs. One of the things we're really proud of that almost no one knows about is our connection with the International Whaling Commission. We have the IWC was established in 1946 as a global body responsible for the management of whaling and conservation of whales. It has 88 member countries. The mandate has not changed, but there's all kinds of new conservation concerns that exist. I'm sure you've heard about it when they're arguing about whale takes, about different countries that still eat whale meat, and it can be very controversial and difficult. We have Dave Matilla, who is a humpback expert and a whale expert and a disentanglement expert, is the chair for the IWC Expert Advisory Panel on Entanglement Response. He also coordinates the Global Whale Entanglement Response Network, or GWERN. It's international when you have lots of acronyms. This is an initiative to mitigate human impacts to whales, and it's headquartered here. And it builds on an existing partnership between CCS and IWC. And basically, this program goes around the world, help training people how to do disentanglements, and creates an apprenticeship program for key disentanglement folks, and establishes a training curriculum for, worldwide. He was in Peru and Ecuador and several other countries last year. We even make some of the equipment that teams around the world use to disentangle various marine whales. We actually get the steel and fashion this and provide it at cost to teams so that teams in Africa, Sri Lanka, and other areas don't have to worry about not having the money to buy something on the retail market. We also do these training worldwide. It's actually very fulfilling. One of the things we do too is the Global Ocean Forum, and this is one of the things that Rich Delaney is the chair and president of. This is a marine policy-based international program that convenes workshops and conferences on issues of concern to the global oceans, especially related to climate change. Beautiful website. They're doing all kinds of cool stuff. And Rich will be continuing to do that. All of our work is used for global, national, regional, and local issues. We provide all of our information to many different organizations, from NOAA to National Marine Fisheries. We're on the ground and on the phone every day, making sure that our information gets out, often same day, to management groups that need this information, either to protect marine mammals, to protect people, to help fishermen. One of the last items is we have the last of the right whales coming around, and this is an incredible movie. We showed it at the Cape Cinema to to a sold out crowd on March 24th. We're going to be bringing it hopefully here to Provincetown, maybe to the Wellfleet Cinema, likely back to the Cape Cinema. So if you get a chance to see this movie, please do. I'm sorry it's so fuzzy. I couldn't get a great picture. This is an incredible movie that poignantly shows exactly what our research teams do, and I'm so proud of them in it. Quick thank you to, and this is just, we have about 4,000 donors. I'm quickly thanking all our foundations and institutional support. And yes, they're very tiny names. There's a bunch of them here, but I did want to recognize all of the different foundations and institutions that give us money. Here's some of our corporate donors that we work with that provide everything from items to our auction to ability to get boat engines, which are one of our biggest costs, and the different government agencies that assist us and that have provided us funding and which we have helped with their coastal management issues. And without further ado, I'm done.